In this video, I'm sharing my top tips for covering a round cake in fondant. Once you're comfortable with this foundational cake decorating technique, you can move on to more advanced fondant techniques like this. So let's get started. You'll need fondant and a round cake that's iced in buttercream or ganache. You'll also need a long rolling pin with or without the guides, a dusting pouch filled with cornstarch, a fondant smoother, a ruler or measuring tape, a sharp knife, and a fondant roller or pizza cutter. You also need a clean, dry work surface on which to roll out the fondant. You may also roll your fondant out on parchment paper or a large mat. These are optional. Also optional but very handy is a finger pump spray with a few tablespoons of clean water. I'll be using gloves in this video, but if you don't have gloves, be sure to use a small amount of solid white vegetable shortening or coconut oil to prevent the fondant from sticking to your hands. All of these items are listed in the description below. Always start with a cake that's set. You should be able to touch the icing like this without disturbing the icing. Covering your cake in ganache works very well too. This one has been iced in buttercream and refrigerated. This cake already has a cake board under it and has been placed on a cake base. Next, we measure the top of the cake, which looks to be about 8.5 inches, and then the sides of the cake, which looks to be about 3 inches. You'll want to add the height plus the width plus the height, and for this cake it gives me about 14.5 inches, so I know that I must roll my fondant to at least 14.5 inches in diameter. Here I've opened the fondant and now I'm kneading it and warming it with my hands. Always make sure that your fondant is pliable and not too dry. This is an example of the dreaded elephant skin. The best way to prevent elephant skin is to spritz your fondant with a little bit of water using the finger pump spray. The fondant should be smooth and able to stretch like this. Now to dust the clean surface with cornstarch and begin rolling out the fondant. I start by rolling the fondant into a ball, then I flatten the ball into a thick pancake shape. If you're new at rolling out fondant, try using the guides that accompany your rolling pin to help you get a consistent thickness. Here I'm using the orange guide. Be careful not to roll over your fondant with your guides. Next, roll the fondant from the center, then out, away from yourself and toward yourself. Occasionally lift and rotate the fondant about 90 degrees. This will help the fondant to stay round. Don't be afraid to apply more cornstarch to the surface if it seems that your fondant is sticking. Use the length of your entire hand to minimize ridges. Now this is how thick my fondant is when I use the orange guide. Alternately, you can roll out your fondant without the guides like this. Remember to use the proper rolling technique and to rotate your fondant occasionally for a nice consistent thickness. Always roll a larger diameter than you need. Remember that I only needed about 14.5 inches in diameter. I've rolled out more, and this will help when I'm covering the sides of my cake. If you don't roll the fondant out correctly the first time, you can always gather the fondant and roll it out again. Now to finally cover our cake. I take the rolling pin and lightly dust it with cornstarch. Next, loosely roll the fondant around the rolling pin, then quickly move your cake into place. Next, use the finger pump spray bottle to spritz the entire cake. The moisture will help the fondant stick to the cake. Next, roll your fondant off of the rolling pin and onto your cake. You'll want to do this gently. The next step is to use the fondant smoother to secure the fondant to the top of the cake while smoothing it. The fondant smoother is essential to this process. Once the top is smooth, you can begin to gently secure the fondant to the sides of the cake. Working little by little and starting at the top edge, gently press the fondant onto the cake. As you near the bottom edge, spread out the bottom of the fondant, creating a skirt. And continue to gently press the fondant into the cake. Skirting prevents the fondant from wrinkling at the bottom of your cake. Only after securing the sides of the cake can you remove the excess fondant with a fondant roller or pizza cutter. If you notice any air bubbles, simply pierce them with a straight pin and smooth them with the fondant smoother. Never use a roller to cut the fondant from the very base of your cake. You'll want to use a sharp knife and cut down through the fondant instead. Do this little by little around your cake. This creates the cleanest edge and helps to prevent tears. Now here is our beautiful blank canvas, all ready to be decorated. If you want to learn more about cake decorating, subscribe to my channel for more tips and tutorials. Be sure to give this video a like and share it if it was helpful. As always, thanks for watching.